We had our holiday party, or our fall party, I should say, and we just had a good time. Appreciate Mark and Tabitha and all the work, and those of you that helped, and just had a great time. Several people told me this morning that I was the best Barney they had ever seen. I looked everywhere for one bullet, and I couldn't find that one bullet. But we got over to the preacher's house last night. We stayed over there last night. I told Becky, I said, you're the prettiest family Lou I've ever seen. She didn't say anything about me being the most handsome Barney she'd ever seen, but we had a great time. Enjoyed everyone being here, being together. I want to look at a lesson today. Why are we losing? Did I not give you that lesson? I've got it here somewhere. See, old Barney, he can't remember everything. I couldn't even get my bullet, so now I can't even get my... Why are we losing our children? It says, there was a survey done not too long ago that 70% of teenagers quit church after high school. And here's why. We live in a very secular, faithless world. It's getting worse. We have secular humanism. Most of our college professors are promoting it, that it's within man to direct his own idea and his own standard, what he feels like is right or wrong. If he thinks it's right, then it must be right. It's humanism going to the seed. Then the idea of sexual promiscuity all over our society. And when you think about the idea of materialism and selfish, we live in a very selfish country. Materialism, we're being bombarded with materialism, more things, more possessions, just more, whatever it is that you want. And then this feel-good, emotion-driven religion. I have known young people that grew up in the same congregation for years and years, believing what the Bible said. And then they get out and they go somewhere and they decided that, maybe we didn't look at things just the right way. And someone has convinced them that you've got to have more emotion. You've got to feel good about it. We do need to feel good about our faith, and yes, we ought to have emotion, but listen, friends, there are multitudes and multitudes of religious folks in the world that are relying on emotions and feel good instead of a thus saith the Lord. Why are we losing our children? Because more are given over to this agnostic and atheism, where we're doubting now whether the Bible is really right or not. We're wondering, are we really teaching? Is the Bible really right? Are we really teaching them right? And so therefore, many, 70%, according to George Barna's survey, that 70% of young people will leave their church after graduation. Some will come back, but most will not. Every day, our children are being bombarded with ungodliness, and also in mass media as well as in culture. That's just a little bit of things that I pulled off the internet. And it's a sad situation, brethren, but many of our young people, many of our own young people, they're not immune to this. They're not exempt from this. This is reality. And we've got to make sure that we want our children not to be faced with that. Ephesians 6 and verses 10 and 11, Paul said, he says, finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord and the power of His might. Put on the whole armor of God that you might be able to withstand the wiles of the devil. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, against principalities and against powers and of darkness of this world, and about spiritual wickedness in high places. What are we wrestling against? We're wrestling against the world. I want you to look at the idea, how are we to raise our children, our kids, in a faithless world? It's obvious that when I grew up in the 60s, things are different. And I know some of you are probably sitting there and saying, he needs to realize we're in the 21st century. This is 2021. And the principles that we live by and that I grew up by won't work in 2021. I believe that's where we're making a mistake. I believe that we think that we are smarter than the principles that God has set forth in His book. I want us to realize and to teach our children that they are to be in the world, but they are not to be of the world. Love not the world, neither the things that are in the world, for all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eye, and the pride of life is not of the Father, but of the world. And the world's passing away, and the lust thereof. But he that doeth the will of God shall endure forever. I want you to notice, as Cole read for us this morning, in Deuteronomy 6, 4 through 9, the idea of being able to teach your children, verses 8 and 9. Teach your children when you lie down. Teach your children when you stand up, when you go in and out. You teach your children. That was how important that was in the law of Moses. If it was that important in the law of Moses, and we're living under a better law, how much more important is that today? Psalm 119 verse 9 says, how can a young man cleanse his way? By taking heed according to His Word. Now what I want to do, I want to give you 5 principles today to help us to be better parents. First of all, I want you to note that there is not just a manual that fits one and all. If you had 6 children, I'd say bless your heart, but if you did, if you had 6 children, your application of some of this is going to be different from child to child. But there are some principles, and these principles will work, I promise you. Number 1, we are to lead our children. Proverbs 22 verse 6, train up a child in the way that he should go. And when he is old, he shall not depart from it. One translation says he will not, but he shall not depart from it. Train up a child in the way that he will go. Ephesians 6 and verse 4. Fathers, provoke not your children to wrath, but bring them up in the nurture and the admonition of the Lord. Now, got to lead them. We have been given what I call God-given responsibilities as parents. You know what? One of the most important things about being a parent is that you are entrusted with one of God's precious babies. And here you are, you have a chance to be able to mold their minds. We are not called to be our children's friend or spoiler, babysitter, or our food provider. Now, some of these are included in being a parent, and I understand all of that. But listen, a parent is a trainer. You've got to look at yourself as a trainer. What am I supposed to do to my children? I'm training them. I'm molding them. I'm getting them ready for this big old world where there is all kinds of agnosticism, where there is atheism, where there's materialism, where there's worldliness, and they're going to have to face the world in the future, and you've got to realize that you are a trainer. You've got to lead them. You cannot drive them. You've got to lead them. It's easier sometimes to tell people how to rear their children than to rear your own. I can remember one place I was preaching and there was an older lady and children got on her nerves. There'd be children crying and somebody told me the other day they apologized to me the way their children were. I didn't know their children were misbehaving because I'm focusing on this. I'm not focusing on where your child's going to cry. But I'm going to tell you one thing. I told that older lady finally, I said, ma'am, you ought to be thankful that we've got children in our assembly, that we've got this problem, because multitudes of congregations would love to have the problem that we have here at Willette, and that is all kinds of children. And when you take 100 children, you're going to have a little noise. Let's be a little bit patient, and let's make sure as parents that we lead them and we don't drive them. there are different kinds of parents. There's authoritative parents where I say it, you're going to do it. It doesn't matter whether you like it or not. We're going to talk a little bit about that today. I'm not for sure that's going to work in today's society. Do you have the authority to say that? Yes. Is that the best kind type of parenting? No. The best kind is to lead them. The best kind is to be the example that you want your children to follow. I can remember a few years ago, I read a story where that there was a situation where a 10-year-old boy didn't want to go to church. His daddy never went. His mother did, and his mother told the 10-year-old boy, said, "You're going to go to church with me. You've got to go." He goes to his daddy, and his daddy said, "Son, as long as you live in my house, you've got to go to church." And the little boy looked at his daddy, and he said, "Daddy, why don't you practice what you preach?" I'm going to tell you something. It's easier to send and to drive and to make your children go to church than it is to lead them to church. And I tell you right now, the results will be enormous. When you are the kind of parent that will lead your children in the way that they should go. Number two, I want you to listen to them. I'm not a good listener. You know that. I wasn't a good listener when I was rearing my children up. I was more the authoritative one. They'd say, "Why do you have to do that?" Because I told you to do it. Whereas I probably should have listened to them a little bit more. In Proverbs 18, verse 13, it says, "He who answers a matter before he hears it, it is a folly and a shame to him." Don't make false assumptions. Don't assume something about your children. Have you ever disciplined your child, whipped your child, and you found out, hey, it wasn't his fault or her fault? You know what I did? I jumped to conclusions or assumptions. You know why? He usually did it anyway, or he'd done it before. But I'm telling you, the best kind of parent is listen to your children. Take the time to listen to their needs, their opinions, and problems. The little boy had been bullied at school. These other little boys, every time he'd get on the school bus, they would bully him. They'd take him to the back seat and they'd hit him, and the little boy got where he was having all kinds of problems at home. And his daddy said, "Son, what is wrong with you? You've changed." And the little boy kept saying, "Well, Daddy, I got problems at school." He said, "You've got problems at home too." And he said, "If you don't start acting right, I'm going to take my belt off you and I'm going to whip you." "But Daddy, you don't understand." He said, "You heard what I said." The little boy was trying to tell him something. Come to find out, they did find out. The mother found out through a parent. The little boy had been bullied. And that's the reason he didn't want to go to school. That's the reason he was acting out. But you see, a parent that won't listen is not going to be a very effective parent. You've got to give wise counsel as a parent. You've got to care. You've got to show them you love them, and you've got to care for them. You've got to listen to them. You've got to lead them in the right direction. Not only that, you've got to limit them. Now, this is the one I'm going to spend a little bit of time on, because I'm telling you right now, what was the show that on the news, someone had bought the kids all new bicycles. You may have seen that. And one reason they bought this elementary class all new bicycles, they said, was to get them off the computers, get them off those things. It amazes me. You ever gone out to eat and you look over at the table and there may be 8 people at the table? You know what all 8 of them are doing? All 8 of them are all on the phone. All 8 of them. And or sometimes you'll watch these kids, and you know the big saying is now, if you don't know how to do it electronically, get your third grader to do it. They know how to do it. And there's a lot of truth to that. But what we need to learn to do is, for the Lord, whom the Lord loves, He corrects, just as a father, the son in whom He delights. Proverbs 3 and verse 12. Those who love their children must discipline them. Proverbs 13:24. He that spareth his rod hateth his son, but he that loveth him chasteneth him betimes. Now let me tell you something about discipline. When I was a little boy, you had to discipline me. You had to whip me. I didn't have any of those little gadgets you could take away. We were too poor. They didn't have them available anyway. I was the kind of boy that if Daddy would have just said, son, you go to your room, why, I'd have been got in there and got in trouble. You know what Daddy had to do? He knew that. Of course, he did that with all of us. He would whip me. And one of the things that really bothered me, it may not bother you, I would rather have had a whipping as to be fussed on. Young people don't have a clue what this is, the word sass. Don't you sass me again. Now, you all never did sass your parent. But if you did, you know what they do? They whip you. You know what I see parents doing now? Allowing their children to talk back to them. Their parents will tell them to do something, and if you over and over and over again, the child will keep on doing it, and the parent says, if you don't quit doing it, I'm going to whip you. I'm going to get you. Friends, you've got to learn to limit them. You've got to learn to discipline them. This is tough. Somebody says, you're talking about corporate punishment? Now, I don't know what kind of fancy adjective you want to put in front of that. What I call is whatever the discipline is that will work. You may have one child. You may have one child that you say, look at them, and I had one like that. I whipped her one time, and that's all I had to do, because when I got ready to whip her again, she started crying. I feel sorry for her, and she said, Daddy, I won't do it again. Everybody's different, aren't they? But what I'm saying is there's got to be limitations. There's got to be discipline. We're going to have to quit letting our children run the home. We've done that in our school systems now, and I don't know how it is over here in Macon County and Jackson County, but I do know in a lot of places, I know they're having hard times getting substitute teachers because the substitute teacher says that they just take over the class and there's not anything they can do. You know how long I'd last in that class? Not very long. I'm here to tell you, brethren, a lack of discipline is one huge cause of juvenile delinquency. When I was a juvenile probation officer, I'm telling you right now, when we had our classes, and the very first time they came to that class, I could tell you what their problem was within 15 minutes. I could tell by their facial expressions. I could tell by the first time they talked whether they were going to be respectful, whether they were going to be the kind that had any kind of discipline, but most of them did not have any discipline. Parents must begin discipline when they're very young. I have in this George Barna survey, it said and I think I put it in the bulletin too, by the age of 13, if you haven't practiced any discipline by the age of 13, probably too late. Discipline has to start at a very early age. When they start here and they're crawling around and you say no, I know it's cute. I know it's funny. When they're crawling around and you don't want them to get into something, you tell them no, but they get into it again, and you just think, but what you're learning to do, you're trying to teach them. You're wanting them to learn what no means. You're trying to correct them. Because if they don't learn it at the age of 2 and 3 and 4 and 6, by the time they get 18, they are going to be in a mess. And that's what's happened. Parents must discipline their lives, their children at a very young age. They must discipline them before their lives get out of control. Not only that, proper discipline will deliver children's souls from hell. We found out, there were 4 probation officers. We had about 30, 40 children. And us probation officers, what we did, we were called counselors. So we did a survey among our young people. And you know what we asked? I had a 13 to 18-year-old boys. Never had any girls, always had boys. 13 to 18-year-old boys. We asked those 13 to 18-year-old boys what was the thing in their family, in their home, that they wanted the most. And we said, you write down the answer to it. You don't have to put your name on it. We're not going to show it to anyone else. And you know what the majority of them said? We want our family, our parents. Most of them were dysfunctional families. Most of them did not have a daddy at home. If they had a daddy at home, they didn't have a mother at home. And most of them were very dysfunctional in the sense that they didn't have the adequate attention and love and concern and care. But they said, what was the one thing that you've been lacking in your life? Most of them would put three things: love, discipline, and concern for our well-being. Well, how true that is. Discipline yields the peaceful fruit of righteousness. Friends, people need to be disciplined. We've got discipline in our homes or in our schools. We should have. We've got discipline in our communities. We've got discipline in our government. We've got discipline in every aspect of life. But sometimes our children do not have them. We need to love them. We need to limit them, and we need to love them. Now, let me say this before I go past that limit. I talked about how it's more important, to love them. It's more important to guide them and train them than it is to drive them. You can make your children, because you're the authority, you're the daddy, and you make them do anything you want to. But the most important thing is to show your love, your concern, and to correct them with love and concern for their well-being. It should always be a rule that if you have a child in your house, your child should be subject to your authority. Friends, when it gets to the point that your children start telling you what to do, you need to go rethink your principles on rearing children. It's not fair to your children. That's what they want. And you might say, well, I don't know. Children don't really want discipline. Yeah, you don't let your children just do whatever they want to. You don't let them come. You don't let them go whenever they want to. You just don't let them run wild and do anything. No, you don't do that. You know better than that. And so what you've got to do, you've got to start at an early age teaching them the value to respect authority, and you're the one in authority. When it gets to be that my family, my children start telling me what to do, I am a failure at teaching them what's right and what's wrong in respect and reverence for God. Now, love them. Somebody says love, and 1 John 4, he talks about love, and I'm not going to take the time to read all of those scriptures, but the idea there is that if you really love your children, if you love God, you're going to love your children, and they're going to know without a doubt. As a matter of fact, someone has said, and I think I did, I put it on the front of the bulletin there. We do what we want to do. We find time to do what we want to do. It takes time to love your children. The easiest thing to do, send them into the room, let them play their little games. There was a 17-year-old boy that was on our probation, came from a Christian home. He got in some trouble. And I said, ma'am, part of my job is to go into his room and look at his room. She said, I've not been in there in 5 years. She said, it's going to be a mess. She said, I just keep the door closed. I said, ma'am, that's not the way you need to do. You need to go in there and monitor. She said, I tried to get him to do it. Back when he was 13, 14, 15, he wouldn't listen to me. I just got tired of it. Just shut the door and forget it. Listen to me, young people. Your parents have got rules and regulations and discipline. They whip you. They discipline you because they love you. I promise you that. I appreciate the way that I was raised. Sometimes I thought it was a little extreme. I thought my dad sometimes used a tobacco stick, maybe when he should have used a belt. But my dad loved me. My mom loved me. They wanted me to turn out right. They wanted me to learn respect. And because they loved me, they took the time to discipline me. True love is showing interest in your children to the point that you're going to correct them and you're going to make them mind. You heard me tell this story back in Kmart days, years ago, when I was looking for illustration. I was over in the toy department. I'm always looking for an illustration on a sermon. And I watched this little boy, and he had this little little plastic lawnmower. You know how the noise they make? And man, he was going down there and he went and asked his mama and said, "Can I have that?" And she says, No, you can't have it. Put it up. You got a toy last time you came. You all remember that story. And he kept on pushing it around. I said, "Put it up." I listened 4 times. That woman, that mother, told that little boy, put that lawnmower up. When I was a boy, it took 1 time. He knew he wasn't going to get in trouble. And he said, "I won't," and he started crying. She finally said, "Go ask your daddy." That always works. He runs over to his daddy and he said, "Can I have that?" "What'd your mama say?" She said, "No," but she said, "Go ask you." He's playing both sides. Guess who had the lawnmower going out Kmart checkout? Who won? He did. I'm going to tell you something, friends. There's a principle there. If they had taught that little boy at a very early age that no means no, respect my authority, wouldn't have had that issue. Now, I know there's a lot of factors involved in that. I understand all that. That's a perfect home. Nobody's got perfect home. None of us are perfect parents. None of us. If you raise 10, you have to raise them all a different way. And you probably go back and raise them. If you could go back and redo it, you'd probably do a lot of things different. I would have. You probably would have. And guess what, children? When you get your children, you'll understand what this lesson's about. I promise you. What we as parents want for you as children, we want you to be happy. We want you to be successful in life. And we want you to be a good, strong Christian young man, young lady, and make a difference in our society. But ultimately, we want you to go to heaven. It's our jobs to mold you. We love you. We want to do that. Because we love you. I asked Brother Ratnam one time in India, I said, "Brother," I said, I don't understand y'all's family over here, your home. He said, "What do you mean, brother?" And I said, "Well," he said, "I've never seen, you go into these little villages and you never see a husband and wife ever show any kind of emotion to one another. You never see them holding hands. I've never seen them hug. I mean, do they love their children?" "Oh, yes, brother, they love them. Much love. Our family's the second most important thing to us. The Lord's first." When I watched Brother Ratnam get so ill one night that they had to bring the doctor over and he was really bad shape. I didn't know whether he was going to make it through the night. I watched his granddaughters, grandchildren, the boys. There were a bunch of them in there. They come and got me and said, "Please come and pray." And all the children were in there and all the grandchildren in there, and they were rubbing his muscles and they were putting all kinds of salve and all kinds of anointment on him, and I was praying for him, and they were crying and I was crying, and it convinced me they have a different type of love than we have. Their love is so deep that when one of them needs each other, they're going to be there. Where maybe our love is more on the surface sometimes. Theirs is maybe a little bit deeper. We must love our children unconditionally. Unconditionally. They're your children. You can't just put them out and say, "I don't want them anymore." You love them. You care about them. They're yours. And you love them unconditionally. You don't show favoritism with your children. You don't pull the Jacob deal. I love you. My love may be different for each other. But I still love them unconditionally, and we must love our children equally, and we must love them and share them with love. Affection is very important. What we found out when we had these kids on probation, that most of them had never, ever had any affection at home. Because most of the time, the mom and daddies were on probation, so the children gets on probation, and they never had any affection. When's the last time you told your children you love them? When's the last time your children told you that they love you, they care about you? And not only that, not only should we love them, but we need to link them. Link them to the right kind of friends. So many kids have got friends at a very early age and that most of us don't even, as parents, know who they are. I would not ever send a small kid home with someone else that I didn't know anything about them. I got to link them to the right people. You know, one reason we did that last night, that holiday or that fall festival deal, whatever you want to call it, all having fun and eating chili and getting together and having, because we wanted our children. We can survive without it as adults. We're grown people. I don't have to go over to your house. You don't have to come over to my house. I don't have to link with you necessarily to stay strong and to be the kind of person I ought to be. I mean, it's helpful. Fellowship is good. But what we're concerned about are our children. We want them to be around the right kind of people. We want them to know that they have like-minded peers. Someone said one of the benefits of sending your kids to a Christian college is that for the most part, not all of them, but the most part, they're pretty good kids. Well, there's still good kids around here too. And we love our children. I think we've got some of the prettiest kids that I've ever seen. And you know, I was just thinking last night, I'm not going to mention any names. This little old boy just kept getting my pistol out. I mean, Barney got to have a pistol. And another boy kept trying to pull my handcuffs off. And I needed them because I'm Deputy 5. But you know what I got to thinking? 25 years ago, their daddy's and mama's would have done the same thing. They turned out all right. Brethren, I promise you that if you will link them with the right kind of friends, keep your eye on your children and who they associate with, your children will turn out to be great, great people. Remember, you're in charge. Be a parent, not a pushover. Stand your ground. Whatever's right is right. Stand up for it. Don't compromise. We are instructed to use physical discipline to correct our children, and we are instructed to use verbal reasoning to train our children. Don't have the mindset that I am the parent, you're the child, and it doesn't matter whether you like it or you dislike it, you just go ahead and obey it. That's not the best. The best parent is, I love you, I care about you. I want you to know that I love you, and because I love you, I want you to obey me, and one of these days you'll look back on your life and you will say, you were right. I knew a man one time that his boy played on travel baseball team, and they traveled all over the Upper Cumberland area to play. And so the man went and told the coach, said, yeah, my son can play, but he cannot miss Wednesday night or Sunday for practice or game. Oh, I appreciate that. I'm religious too. There were two boys playing together. One was an elder son, one was a preacher's son. At the end of the year, the game was at 6 o'clock, and it was for the championship. And the one father said to his son, said, you can play till 6:30. I'll have to come pick you up at 6:30 and you have to go. The boy just couldn't understand. What he couldn't understand was, he said, but why? Why do I have to leave the ball game when the elder son doesn't have to leave the ball game and he gets to play ball? And I can remember the story where the father said, I'm not raising his son. I'm raising you. It wasn't too many years ago after that, he had children of his own. He finally went back and told his daddy, he said, I appreciate you doing that. Young people, you'll understand. You'll understand as you get older. When there's rules and there's regulations and there's discipline, it's not because they don't like you, it's because they love you. And they care about you. And they want you to go to heaven. Parents who train their children will find joy in their own lives. These children will go up with balance. Friends, we can't raise them to be a bunch of religious nuts. We don't want to dress them where that they stand out from the whole school. Oh, those people, they're religious nuts. No, we're not training you to be religious nuts. We're not training you to be a part of a cult. We're training you to be respectful, honorable, obedient to the Lord, and doing His will. This is my last slide. One day, we'll close our eyes to time and open them to eternity. Children, you'll do that. Parents, you'll do that. Grandparents, you'll do that. The question of the day, where will your children spend eternity? Where will they go? I read something the other day that said 90% of children will go the direction that their parents guide them. Some of them may leave it, they'll come back. Where will you spend eternity? If one person in this assembly, one child, one parent, one grandparent, one person in this assembly that I thought today would spend eternity in hell, would go to hell, that would break my heart. That would break God's heart. God loves you. God cares about you. There are no perfect parents. There are no perfect daddies and mamas, no perfect children. You may think your children's perfect. You might want to go ask the teachers. And one of the things that we need to learn as parents, we've got to start emphasizing the spiritual over the physical. We demand that they go to school. We demand they get their lessons. That's important to us. But we don't emphasize Bible classes. We don't emphasize the work. We don't emphasize the spiritual. And what our children do as they grow up, they look and they say, well, Daddy and Mama, they didn't think that was that important. We never prayed at home. We never studied together. I never saw Daddy and Mama ever read their Bible. Friends, we've got to change the minds of our children by being the proper role models, and it starts in the home. If you're not a Christian today, why not think about your soul? Our God loves you so much. We love you. We care about you. This church is a church that promotes our youth. We love our children. We love our grandchildren. We love our parents. We want you to be the kind of people that God wants you to be. But if you're not a Christian, you can change that today. You can make a difference in your home. You can decide that you're going to be the kind of Christian daddy, Christian father, the Christian husband, the Christian wife, the Christian child that you ought to be. Maybe you just need today to come and say, hey, I need to obey the gospel. I need to be baptized for the remission of my sins. I need to be added to the body of Christ, to the family of God, and I need the support, I need the prayers, I need the encouragement and the fellowship of this congregation. Maybe you've done that, you failed, you've realized you've let God down, you've let your children down. We're not going to condemn you. We'll pray with you and for you because we love you and care about you. Would you come right now? While together we stand as we sing.